Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sean Ginnivan, and I lead global technology partnerships for Android Enterprise here at Google. If you're new to Android Enterprise, we help organizations manage and secure Android devices at work by offering OS and device-level protections, app management and distribution capabilities, and containerized profiles that help separate work and personal data. Today, I'm excited to kick off a really interesting conversation about a new solution we've developed with our partners, one that brings the core principles of Zero Trust to mobile. But first, let's start with the foundation, Zero Trust, and what is it? Zero Trust is a security approach to device access built on the principle never trust, always verify, and grant only the minimum access necessary. In short, it assumes that no user, device, or network should be inherently trusted, even if they're inside the corporate network. This approach is essential, as work no longer just happens in an office. It happens in coffee shops, airports, and homes, and on mobile. Too often, we isolate mobile security, and this means the endpoints that are easiest to steal are often the least integrated into the same security systems that protect our laptops. But the reality is that phishing and malware attacks also target mobile devices. Verifying the trust status of a device before granting access to data is absolutely critical. And that's where Device Trust from Android Enterprise comes in. Device Trust from Android Enterprise bundles over 20 on-device trust signals that security partners have incorporated into their Zero Trust solutions. Collectively, these signals help verify the trust status of a device. And this in turn helps reduce the risk of data breaches from things like outdated security patches, on-device malware, and weak security passcodes. So that's why today I'm thrilled to sit down with security leaders from CrowdStrike, Okta, and Omnissa to learn how they're integrating Device Trust from Android Enterprise into their solutions, and what that means for the future of mobile security. Let's go meet them. So thanks everyone for joining us. I appreciate you taking the time out of a busy day. And what I thought we would do is have each of you introduce yourselves. Karthik, you're closest to me. Why don't we start with you?
Sure. So my name is Karthik Balendran. I'm a product manager at Okta on the access management team.
Martin Niffen. I'm a senior product line manager working at Omnissa, working on our security and compliance portfolio.
Thiago Teodoro here, Director of Product Management for Endpoint Security at CrowdStrike.
So, obviously each of you bring a wealth of perspectives across the security ecosystem. Zero Trust is a hugely interesting, hot topic across our customer base. I'm curious from your perspective, what's fueling the desire and the interest around Zero Trust for each of you? And Karthik, why don't we start with you?
So in case you don't know, Okta is an identity and access management company, and our mission is to safely enable anyone to use any technology. But with the rise of identity-based attacks such as phishing attacks, prompt bombing, or session hijacking, the identity layer is under attack. By bringing Zero Trust principles to the the starting point of a user in Okta, authentication, that point in time where a user is signing into the workforce application. So specifically that means signing in with a passwordless phishing-resistant authenticator and evaluating whether the user, the network, device context is trusted before granting access to an application.
So Martin, I know folks think about Omnissa as like an EMM company. How's your company thinking about the intersection or thinking about Zero Trust and the interest around Zero Trust?
Yeah, so for Omnissa, our focus is on the autonomous anywhere workspace, meaning we want to enable users to be productive wherever they are. And for users, that typically comes in the form of, hey, we're giving you some work applications and you use these to access your corporate data. But it also expands to other things like your Wi-Fi configuration, your VPN client, the certificates that you might use for authentication in different systems, be it on an identity system or to a network. And so inevitably, as we talk about productivity with our customers, it leads into a question of data loss prevention, and Zero Trust. If we're making these users be productive and they can access corporate apps, then we have to think about what happens if their device falls out of compliance, if it doesn't have good device hygiene, and then maybe we shouldn't give them as much access or we should revoke the level of access that they have. So it falls really naturally where we use EMM as our main lever to enable productivity, and that kind of naturally creates a Zero Trust conversation with our customers.
Tiago, what about you? How are you guys thinking about, or how are your customers thinking about Zero Trust?
So we are in the business of stopping breaches. And when you look at threat actors, when you look at attackers, they follow the path of least resistance. So as we get better at detecting a breach, as we get better at changing the way they behave, they are looking for devices that have higher risk. So understanding device risk, understanding trust signals and zero trust is important to understand where the threat actors will go next. When we look at our customer base, we go from corporate-owned phones to BYOD, to barcode readers in warehouses, for example, kiosks, tablets as well. So it's the whole spectrum of devices. And to go further, there's this growing interest in, of course, stopping the breaches before they happen. So how can we better protect my riskier assets, right? So again, understanding ZTA, understanding the device posture is important to get ahead of the adversaries.
So that's really interesting, and I think it's interesting to hear the commonality of concern across different parts of the ecosystem. And I guess that sort of brings me to my next question is, from a technical perspective, how are you integrating device trust from Android Enterprise into each of your products? And how is that actually helping solve some of these problems that you've been articulating with your customers? And Martin, maybe we'll start with you.
So one of the things that Workspace ONE provides is the ability to set device compliance policies, which basically means for all of these security parameters, you as an organization say, do these security parameters meet the range that I trust? And then we can make use of that device compliance status to either revoke applications and remove them off a device. We can revoke certificates, and we can also make use of it within signal sharing with Okta and other partners, and then as well as in our Workspace ONE Tunnel product, which is our ZTNA client. It's a zero trust network access solution that our customers use to replace their legacy VPN infrastructure. So what we can do with the new device trust solution is actually enhance the device compliance signals that we have and lower the bar of entry for collecting some of these security data, because we can do it with or without device management. So very naturally, if your device falls out of compliance, we can say we're going to block you on the tunnel client. We'll immediately revoke your access, and users like that, or customers like that, real-time feedback from, okay, here's a security signal. Let's take action immediately.
So Tiago, I think folks think about CrowdStrike as a endpoint detection response company, desktops and servers. We're here talking about mobile. Like how is your integration with device trust from Android Enterprise manifesting in your product suite?
Right. Yeah. So we ingest the trust, the device trust signals and calculate a zero trust assessment score or a ZTA score for short. And we do that for each device, and those are updated in real time. So we leverage those signals also to create actions, some manual actions, some automated actions that, for example, isolate that device from the network, or through partnerships, through integrations, we can trigger an uninstall, for example. ZTA is not new for us. We've been doing that on the desktop server side for a while, but this is the first time we deliver it on for a mobile platform.
Awesome. And Karthik, what about for you all? How is the investment in Android device trust from Android Enterprise looking like for Okta?
So we have a device compliance framework called Device Assurance Policies, and we use the Device Trust for Android SDK to enforce device compliance on Android. If I can zoom out for a moment, if I think about the typical Okta customer, their desktop fleet is typically going to be comprised of managed MDM-enrolled devices, whereas the mobile devices are going to be predominantly personal BYOD devices. On desktop, our customers enforce device compliance conditions such as, is this device enrolled in an MDM? Does this device meet the EDR security score? And we actually have integrations with Omnissa and CrowdStrike, so I can enforce that a device is enrolled in Omnissa, that it meets the specific ZTA score, CrowdStrike ZTA score for my organization before granting access. This is super critical on desktop because that's where users are going to access dashboards where company financials are visible. But on mobile, the applications you're accessing on mobile are quite different. You're typically going to your email, chat, and video conferencing application. You don't need as much of a security bar, but it is also the path of least resistance, to borrow a term that Thiago used earlier, because something like 70% of mobile devices in the workforce are unmanaged. And that's where device assurance policies can come in and play. We're not the MDM, we're not an EDR. We're an authenticator application that an end user can install from the App Store, but with the Android Device Trust SDK, we can get granular device posture information and enforce them when the user is authenticating.
So I think it's interesting that you mentioned this idea that the solution works for, the signals can be gathered from both managed devices, so enrolled into an EMM like Omnissa, but also unmanaged devices as well. And I'm wondering if we could go in a little bit more deeply and understand what's unique about Device Trust from Android Enterprise, maybe Android in general, in terms of how it delivers device trust and specifically, how that compares to maybe other platforms that are in the market. I guess we'll start maybe Thiago with you. Like, what does it look like from your perspective, especially from a company that has invested so much in the desktop space historically?
Sure, yeah, I'll go first. So again, going back to EDR and servers and laptops, we have this sensor that sits on top of the platform and has so much important data that we can capture, so much rich telemetry. We want to see that on mobile as well. And also like the collaboration between product management and engineering on getting those features out. Our mutual customers are super happy about seeing that collaboration as well. And when we look at these features, it's super important for us to capture the telemetry in an easy way that doesn't affect performance or any other endpoint activity. And we ingest in a way that can be used and correlated across different OSs as well.
And I think that's definitely when I talk to CIOs and CISOs, that idea of being able to threat hunt across mobile and traditional endpoints is a big deal for them. Karthik, maybe you can sort of speak about this from the Okta perspective.
Yeah, so a challenge for us has been to enforce device posture for Android across a wide range of OEMs. Let's take that OS version compliance I was speaking about a bit earlier. Each OEM receives operating system updates, security patch updates at a different point in time. So if I'm an Okta admin and I'm writing a policy that says this device must be up to date with the latest security patches, there's no guarantee that user A and user B will have that security patch available on that device when they're trying to access Zoom or Slack or Gmail, and that could result in them getting blocked from doing something super critical to their job. So with the Android Device Trust SDK, we have the level of granularity that I need that I didn't have before, where we can enforce a check that, for example, a real check, requires the OS to be up to date with the latest security patch or the latest major OS version, but only if that device has that update available to it.
So you basically can write the policy that says, you should be on Android 16 if it's available to you as a user.
That's exactly right. And not everyone is going to author a policy like that, but what we want to do is build that security dial and allow our admins to adjust the security dial to the assurance they need based on the application and the device and the user.
Martin, what about for you?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that are novel that we're getting out of this. One, we are getting more data than we were pulling on our own. And so it's super helpful to have new security indicators that we weren't thinking about or able to pull from the device on our own. Two, we no longer require device management to do this. So, being able to meet customers where they are and say, hey, we can support unmanaged devices is super effective for us. And then three, really having, the authority of Android and Android Enterprise behind these signals is really helpful. We used to have to do a lot of the scanning and hunting and API calls ourselves. We would have to interpret what that data meant. And now, since it's just been simplified by Android Enterprise, it's a lot easier for us to consume and ensure the security signal that we're collecting is accurate.
You spoke about this idea. I think each of you have spoken about this idea that these signals are being provided in real time, and I can imagine if you're looking at something like authentication, not having to go round trip to the server every time and add that additional latency would be valuable. Maybe for each of you, can you think from a customer perspective about where these use cases manifest themselves and how the real-time integration or aspect of the integration really makes a difference? And maybe I'll start with you, Karthik.
Yeah, I can go first. So I'm here visiting Sunnyvale. Flew in here from Seattle, staying at a hotel, both places where there are unsecure Wi-Fi connections available for me to connect to. So I have a friend who was traveling and he connected to a spoofed Wi-Fi network at a local airport and was phished into signing to a spoofed website and had his credentials stolen and an account compromised. So if I were to speak to this friend, my advice to him would be to, hey, make sure you're using a passwordless phishing-resistant authenticator. And if it's a workforce application, make sure your IT department has some zero trust policies applied to it where you're, for example, checking to make sure that the Wi-Fi connection is secure before you sign into anything critical.
Martin, what about for you?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we want to meet our customers where they're at, and our customers want to embrace making all of their users productive. And so for us, the big thing for us is that we can do this on unmanaged devices. The big risk is that without device management in place, there's a lot of things that we don't know about this user's device. When it comes to user choice, they might have their own preference of email client or web browser. And web browsers are a giant attack vector, particularly when, as a zero trust network access solution, many of the apps that we're supporting are browser-based applications. So mitigating threats or understanding the web view that's in use in particular, so the new security indicator for the default web view is super helpful to making sure that they're either using Google Chrome, which we have a huge level of trust in, or one of the other trusted browsers, and that the user hasn't rolled their own browser, forked Chromium, and decided to put their own special sauce into it. And so it allows us to give that visibility, and that's been really helpful in some of the customer conversations that we've had.
Nice. And Taco, what about you?
Yeah, from an EDR perspective, the ones that are more important for us is understanding the risk before they escalate, right? So we talked a little bit about hunting across different endpoints. Same is valid here. As I look at an IOC, indicator of compromise, an IP or a domain, for example, I might see that first on a laptop, and then how do I know if that IP that might be a command and control server has it been seen in any other of my devices? So having that cross visibility across your entire fleet, endpoint fleet, mobile and no mobile, is super important. And also get those signals, the real-time signals, quickly, so we can stay ahead of the adversary, ahead of the threat actor. We can isolate a device. We can use our integrations again to remove an application, for example, Gmail, and also integrate with third parties to remediate or resolve that issue in a different way.
Nice. So I think I mentioned earlier, one of the things that's unique about this panel is just the breadth of security expertise here, because the three of you service such a kind of different portions of the security ecosystem, and you've all been in security for quite some time. So I'm going to ask the daring question. I'm going to ask you to predict the future, but more specifically, what are you watching closely in this space? What are some of the things you all think will be important in the next year or two? And Martin, why don't I start with you?
I also asked artificial intelligence what is coming in the future and that I should look out for, and it said artificial intelligence is the answer. And so I think we're all interested in it. I think there's good and risky of it in that there's a bunch of new indicators that we could imagine that AI can help us get to quicker than doing all the science ourselves. And then there's also risks to it too, where AI is bringing in data from all of these different sources And for large enterprises where they're connected to many applications and users' data lives in many different applications, there are some concerns around that. At Omnissa, we're strongly focused on making use of AI in the right ways, and then also making sure that our customers can make use of AI in responsible ways.
Awesome. Tiago, what about you?
Yeah, I'll start with AI as well. In different ways, threat actors using AI, our products using AI in the cloud, on the sensor, us doing our jobs, being more productive using AI as well. And I have a number 2 here, which is a mix of previewing the future, but an ask for you guys, which is we have a sensor, we get a lot of great telemetry from the endpoints, and we just want more. We would love to have processes, data to understand what's running on the device. We can leverage our expertise in IOAs, indicators of attack, and bring that to mobile as well. So that would be a huge win to stay ahead of the adversaries.
We'll try to take the feature request under advisement. But Karthik, what about you? What's interesting to you?
So I've spoken a fair bit today about protecting sessions as they're getting established when a user is authenticating, but something that's super important to Okta is making sure that session is continually protected once it's been established. So we can evaluate the device context of a device when the user is authenticating, but what happens after they've authenticated? What if the device gets stolen, for example? We have policies in place that continually monitor the compliance of that device. And if compliance state changes, we can ask the user to re-authenticate or terminate all of their sessions. We also have a risk engine that does anomaly detection with AI and drives the same outcome where the user can get asked to re-authenticate or have our any active sessions terminated if there is an adversary attack or some sort of anomaly that could have resulted in a negative outcome for the end user. And I can really see Android device trust being an input to both of these in the future.
Well, thanks to each of you for the time you spent today and for the deep collaboration each of you have taken to help bring device trust from Android Enterprise to market. And before we wrap up, let's close out with some final thoughts. Thanks again to all of our panelists for taking part in today's conversation. As we've heard, device trust from Android Enterprise is more than just a new feature. It's a fundamental shift in mobile security. This approach recognizes a critical modern reality. Secure access must be verified on every device, regardless of who owns it or how it's managed. And it's this full spectrum of protection that sets Android Enterprise apart. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with just a few key takeaways. First, mobile security cannot operate in a silo. It must be fully integrated into your organization's overall security posture. Second, you must actively verify the trust status of every device, whether it's managed by an EMM or not, before it can access corporate resources. And finally, organizations require fast, adaptable security that can keep up with the pace of your business. This starts with having a foundation of reliable, real-time trust signals that can inform your access policies. And that's precisely what device trust from Android Enterprise is designed to help you do. To learn more about device trust from Android Enterprise and our partners, please visit the links in the resource section. You can also explore our full library of Android Talks episodes that cover topics like AI, productivity, and security by scanning the QR code on your screen. Thanks again to our partners from CrowdStrike, Okta, and Omnissa, and from all of us on the Android Enterprise team, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.